In this episode of Home Built Workshop, we're going to tackle an organizational project. I'm sure we could all benefit from a project like this. We're going to use these 3D printed brackets and some wood to create this modular and highly customizable drawer organizer that you're going to be able to use in your shop, in your home, or wherever you need to organize your filthy drawers. Stick around. Now I feel like it's a pretty safe bet that I'm not the only one with some sort of a junk drawer around the house. Maybe it's a toolbox drawer, a desk drawer, or in my case, this particular kitchen drawer. This drawer is a disaster. Everything is just scattered all over the place. There's no sort of organization. This particular drawer is the inspiration for this project. I wanted to come up with a way to make an organizer that was fun to assemble, very easy to assemble, and also be highly customizable to whatever your application is. I think I've got just the solution. We're going to use some 3D printing. First, we got to do a little bit of woodworking. I've got some elm here that I milled with my chainsaw mill a year or two ago. These have been roughly planed and sanded. They're not even to thickness yet, but we'll take care of that in a little bit. First, we need to rip some strips down that we're going to use to make our divider, but we can't just run this on the table saw because of this live edge, so we need to square that up first. Now, these pieces are not exactly perfect. They kind of have a weird shape, but this end of it has some fairly straight grain stuff, and that's where I'm going to try to get most of the material from. I'm going to use a straight edge and just draw a straight line along the edge. Then I'll follow that line over at the bandsaw. This will give me a nice straight edge that we can then joint nice and smooth at the joiner. And now I can use that freshly jointed edge along with my table saw fence to rip these down into strips that are 1 3/4 wide. So here's the stock we're going to use. I've cut more than I think I'm going to need because some of these do have some knots and stuff that I may have to work around. Before we can move on and start cutting these to length though, I want to get these down to 1/4 inch thickness. This project is designed to work with 1/4 inch stock. Whatever method you choose to get it to 1/4 inch, whether you hand plane it, whether you run it through your planer. For me, I'm going to use my drum sander. With our stock now at the 1/4 inch thickness, we're now ready to start cutting these things to length. But first, I want to show you really quick how this whole project is going to be going together. I sat down in Fusion 360 and I designed these 3 different brackets. We have a corner bracket, a T bracket, and a 4-way X bracket. With these 3 different brackets, I think you can come up with just about any configuration that you might ever need to organize any sort of drawer. I also included some small holes on here where you could use some small wood screws to secure the pieces of wood just in case you didn't have a snug fit. Turns out I didn't need it for this project, but I'm going to leave the holes on here for future projects. Now all I really need to do is fire up the 3D printer and print a bunch of these things out. I just use regular PLA for my brackets, but if you wanted to use a different material, there's no reason you couldn't use whatever you have. And here are all of our brackets. Now that I have all the brackets printed, we're ready to take some measurements of the drawer and start cutting our stock down. There's one thing I need to keep in mind though. For these brackets, they're all based around the same 3/8 diameter square post down the center. So depending on what piece it is we're measuring for, we need to account for that 3/8 of an inch. So some of these pieces I'm going to have to offset by 3/4 of an inch if I have a bracket on either end. But really, it's a nice even number, really easy to make that calculation to account for that post. I think it's going to be easier if I just dump that disastrous drawer out, bring the drawer out here, then I can make all my measurements right here and cut them right on the spot. I'll I'll begin by measuring the inside dimensions of my drawer. These are the measurements that I'm going to need to subtract 3/4 of an inch from to account for the corner brackets. Some of these cuts I don't have to account for that 3/8 inch post, but some of them I do, so it's going to be a big help by taking the time, write everything down, sketch out how you want everything before you cut. It really just depends on where your piece lands and the spacing that you're going to want. If you're going for a long dimension that's going to involve 2 corners, then you need to account for the 3/8. But for certain width between certain dividers, you can just cut the dividers to that length. Actually, drawing it out on paper makes a huge difference because I can already kind of plan everything out ahead of time. With my basic dimensions figured out on paper, it's time to start making some cuts. I found it really easy and very helpful to assemble this thing right inside the drawer as I make the cuts. I can make the measurements right there in the drawer. It's really easy to start putting this thing together. I'm missing one T. I need to go print one more. Dang it. Guess I need to learn how to count. That's okay. We can still keep cutting some of these other pieces. It's coming together really quick. As soon as I have the missing T piece off the 3D printer, we can continue. This is the last piece, fresh off the 3D printer. It's still a little bit warm. And there! Except now I gotta take it all back apart because, well, had I thought about this ahead of time, I would have pre-finished all of these strips before I started cutting them. That way, all I would have had to do is assemble it and basically be done. But I didn't think that far ahead. Plus, these brackets are upside down anyway because I wanted to see that open side so I could get an accurate measurement. But let's disassemble this thing and do a little bit of sanding. But first, I want to try to take this whole thing out in one piece and see how that works. Now overall, I'm impressed with how rigid this is. Now to make sure it's super rigid, I did create holes in these brackets where you could install some small wood screws, but really, I don't think, at least for my application here, I don't think I'm gonna need to do that, and I'm gonna go ahead and proceed without using screws. I'm gonna leave those on the models, but I don't think I need them. If you find yourself having to disassemble your organizer like I did, take a picture of it first. It could save you a little bit of headache when it comes time to reassemble. Now I'll just give all of these parts a quick sanding with some 220 grit. This is really just to remove any splinters on the edges and to soften the corners a little bit. Now I'm just going to apply a couple of coats of some satin spray lacquer. Shake well before using. While our lacquer's dry, it's time to reassemble this thing. Let's see if I can get this right the first time or if I have to reassemble it a time or two. When I designed the brackets, I closed in the top side to basically hide the joint and make it look a little bit neater. The bottom side is open and it works great to be able to measure off the bottom side, but when you assemble it, make sure that the closed in side is on the top. Nice. That works great. Even if this was not going to be in a drawer, it's still really sturdy. It would be totally supported just like that if this was in some larger toolbox drawer or something like that. That works awesome. Guys, if you would like to make your own divider like this, I'm going to make the STL files available for these clips for free to you guys. All you have to do is hit the link in the video description, which will take you to my website where you can download these for free, print your own, or on my website also I will offer a pre-printed set of these brackets. That way if you don't have a printer and you still want to do it, you can pick up some brackets over there, make your own. So thanks a lot for watching this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you guys can also use some of these parts to make your own drawer organizer. Any configuration you want to do, you can do it with these brackets. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next time. Take that, messy drawers. Get in there. Don't argue with me. Look at that shelf liner paper. That's from like 1910 or something like that. Probably should have changed that, but that's okay. You guys can get a kick out of it. Something so simple is going to make such a big difference. I'm just making a drawing really quick, figuring out my dimensions, doing some math. I didn't suspect this is going to be that much math.